So I've actually been tasked with discussing civil religion in Baptist political thought. And I was kind of intrigued at this topic simply because I find myself someone who is very much intrigued by the notion of religion playing a definite positive role in society. And I firmly believe that, while also wanting to put in guardrails from allowing religion to be co-opted or corrupted for problematic ends. And to that end, I actually think that we as Baptists have not done enough thought on perhaps the positive construals of civil religion. And so that's allowed for us to kind of adopt, I think, some kind of short-sighted sentiments about kind of a public religion from a Baptist perspective. So let me kind of offer a definition for civil religion to begin my remarks. What I'm defining it is a civil religion refers to the cultural utility and accommodation of religious doctrine, religious tradition, and religious symbols that legitimizes and services the identity and social cohesion of a given political community. It's kind of my operating definition. And so for our purposes, this is a value neutral definition. I want to grant that there are positive and negative aspects of civil religion, but I'm unwilling to say that all concepts of civil religion are inherently flawed or inappropriate. And I think if you were to poll most Baptists today, they would have a very negative connotation of civil religion. And so if anything, I hope my remarks begin to maybe pull us back from a wholly negative construal of civil religion. There are positive dimensions of civil religion. One of those, I just mentioned this in an article that I published yesterday, is the fact that Christmas is a federal holiday, which means Christianity is playing some level of informing the civitas as far as what our government actually formally recognizes as a holiday that is, or at least historically was, religious in nature, and I think even today would still be regarded as religious in nature. I'm also thinking here of the Declaration of Independence. We are endowed by our Creator, so whether we call that the Christian God or not, there's the fact that religion does play a part in the American experiment that we should not just run roughshod over or dismiss. At the same time, there are negative aspects. We don't need to catalog the full history, but we can all point to the way in which civil religion was used to prop up racism in our culture. And so we want to acknowledge that there are detrimental aspects to civil religion that should cause us to have a higher level of vigilance to it. What I'm wanting to get to here is that civil religion just is. No one goes about intentionally saying, I want a civil religion. It just happens as a byproduct of organic communal interaction. And so insofar as we conceive of religious liberty or of civil religion as a product of voluntary religious commitments that are organic from the bottom up, I think that we have the possible beginnings of how Baptists would want to think about civil religion. So 4 reasons why a Baptist would be opposed or concerned with civil religion. First off is that our soteriology precludes the idea of affixing Christian to what is not able to be truly regenerate. So cultures and the civitas do not get saved, persons do. So in this vein, civil religion can kind of easily promote religious nominalism, which over time can flower into unbelief. So that's where we want to be vigilant about. Secondly, is that our ecclesiology wants to clearly demarcate the differences between the regenerate church and more broadly, the so-called Christian culture. It's not that we deny a culture can be influenced by Christianity. Ours has been, and that's a good thing. But that the locus of the church's mission is not first and foremost cultural triumphalism, that it is proclamation of the gospel through the vehicle of the local church. If we have success outside the walls of the church, that's totally fine. But let us understand that our primary locus is the gathered church. Third is that our missiology wants to draw clear lines between the saved and the unsaved in order to witness to them. And pastors will tell you that it's almost more difficult to convert what Dean and Sarah calls the unsaved Christian than the pagan. And so civil religion can actually have a detriment to mission in the terms of having to actually deconvert the unsaved Christian who isn't actually a Christian, but might think that they are. And then fourth, the reason that we should have some concern about it, and I mentioned this already once, is that civil religion can be used to justify existing power structures that are bad or evil. So we just need to be aware of that. So 4 reasons here why I think Baptists should think critically about civil religion as a possible necessity. First is that civil religion can serve as a forerunner to conversion by leavening the culture to Christianity's rightful influence over public morality. And here, actually, I will recognize Joe Rigney's talk, I believe at the National Conservative Conference, that I think he was really channeling this in a very proper way. But here we're thinking too about kind of the byproducts of cultural influence of Christianity. So Tom Holland's book, Dominion, you have individuals like Douglas Murray, who is an atheist, who's recognizing that atheists don't have a doctrine of human dignity, and they might need to look to Christians for it. So this is the whole notion of borrowed capital. Ideas like equality and fairness and justice, I think, have been more fulsomely understood consistently and coherently within a Christian framework that our society has more or less parroted. And then we also have cultural virtues, ideas like forgiveness and mercy that our culture thinks of itself as championing and hypothetically loving. I think those come to us from a Christian grammar. And as our culture kind of secularizes, you'll notice that we're becoming less forgiving and less merciful. A second reason we should be open to the idea of civil religion is that we need to understand that invariably nature abhors a vacuum, and I would rather it be Christianity that fills that vacuum than secular progressivism. Perhaps that's pragmatic. I fully grant that. But here I'm speaking to the fact that Christians, I think, are waking up to the myth of neutrality and kind of pure liberal proceduralism, and that behind our context, behind kind of the liberal order, and I was actually lecturing on this today in class, I think we have to have an understanding of kind of a commitment to pre-liberal traditions. And I think Christianity is kind of that pre-liberal tradition that has helped form so much of what has made America, America. A third reason is that Christianity communicates cultural norms. So their cultural adoption by no means pollutes or dilutes Christianity itself. I'm thinking here of a quote from Os Guinness. He said this, he said, "Celebrate the naked public square all you want, but when the reality of winter sets in, you start looking for clothes." And I think this is a helpful recognition that following from the second principle, that Christianity does communicate cultural norms. We do have a morality to our system, and the adoption of that morality is not intrinsically bad or flawed on its face. So we can look at our culture right now, the trans issue, declining marriage rates, we have the loneliness epidemic, we have this new term, deaths of despair. And I think Christianity actually has a countervailing response to all of these realities that can positively contribute to the common good. Fourth is that we should understand, so boy, that time goes fast. I'll be quick here. Fourth is that we should understand that civil religion is a pedagogical mediating structure between hyper-individualism and totalitarianism. And here I'm thinking of the value and utility of civil religion vis-a-vis the American founding. And not all of the American founders were evangelicals by any stretch. Some were, but all of them understood that religion was absolutely necessary for the formation of morality, and for there to be virtue, there had to be morality as well. And so religion was important for that component to our founding. So a few guardrails on how Baptists criticize and think about civil religion. I think we should stop posturing that driving Christianity off to the margins of society will necessarily purify Christianity. Regimes can have real impacts on religious systems. We hear the phrase, the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church, which that was Tertullian or Origen, I forget which. That's not a canonical statement. It's not inspired. And we can look and see the real harm that, for example, the Japanese regime in the 19th century had on Christianity that has long-lasting effects into the present. Secondly, is that we should see civil religion as a byproduct of successful mission, not the mission itself. Third is that we should understand that in criticizing civil religion, we are criticizing the successful efforts of our Christian forebearers and our own cultural inheritance. And listen, I understand the true dangers of civil religion, but we should also recognize that we have civil religion because the church, I think, was successful to some type of degree in previous times that includes how we received the faith ourselves. Fourth is that a mature embrace of civil religion will neither baptize it nor repudiate it, but see it as a cultural inheritance to vigilantly guard society from corrosive secularism, while at the same time being clear on the dangers of civil religion. Real quickly, ending here is perhaps a program for better thinking about civil religion. And here is the category that I'm adopting and kind of trying to work on, is this notion of civic theism and the natural law. And to understand that civil religion is an entailment of civic theism, the idea that God is knowable from a creational standpoint as the creator. Not everyone acknowledges that same God as the triune God, as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And so this gets reflected in reality and in culture. When our culture faces a tragedy and our default impulse is to talk about thoughts and prayers, because we have this instinct to run to the transcendent, even if we're not necessarily talking about that in a triune sense. I think you can justify this by looking at Psalm 19, between the differentiation between God as Elohim versus God as Yahweh, to talk about the creational understanding of God versus a covenantal understanding of God, and then to understand civic theism and civil religion as a component of common grace as well. And then I think we would want to ground this in what Calvin would refer to as the duplex cognito Dei, the idea that there is a twofold understanding of God, that there is knowing God as Redeemer, and then knowing God as the Creator. And this is from what Calvin also refers to as the sensus divinatus. So that when we're talking about issues of kind of that remnant morality post-fall, it allows us to have an opportunity to talk about not just morality, but the giver of that morality, which is God. So with that, I'll conclude my remarks.